3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race, presented by Shimano. This is the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, freaks you out for the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
And I am Fatty. This would be season 8, but we are 190 episodes into a podcast about a 105-mile mountain bike race. That's one episode for every 0.55 miles, Hottie. And we are going to declare a red carpet moment for the show.
Geez, I wonder if anybody's ever listened to the show while racing the Leadville 100. Don't do that. Focus on the dirt ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, folks, this is our 6th in Harrison, but we're not going to get maudlin about this thing.
No, that is not our way. But we do want to thank the sponsors we have who've been with us, really, many of them, for every episode of this show.
Well, let's start with our presenting sponsor, Shimano. I don't know if there is a company we could be more proud to have as our presenting sponsor, Fatty. They really brought some shine to the show.
Yeah, they sure did. A big company supporting a very small independent podcast. We love those guys. We're both proud to ride and talk about Shimano. That's going to continue to be true. Check what I am riding this year at Leadville 100 or any year. You will see. The bikes change all the time. The brand of components does not.
And that's true of Envy as well. Fatty, you have tried that M5 Pro wheels, I understand.
I have. I've bought 3 pairs.
Oh, boy. Oh, boy.
1 for the hammer, 2 for me. So you can see how that works out. I don't know how they did it, but Envy came out with a wheel set recently that is stronger, lighter, and cheaper than its predecessor. It is the best mountain bike wheels I've ever owned. And as you know, Hottie, that is saying a lot.
Right. And the feed has been with us right from the beginning as well. They've been fueling us and our listeners since we launched this show in 2018. Now, how many gallons of gel do you think you've consumed during that time?
2 vats. No, it's a metric I don't even want to consider, but big thanks to the feed for being the sponsor of what I consider to be the single most important component of finishing this race, fueling. I wish they would ask racers who don't finish what went wrong, because I bet that fuel-related issues would account for more DNFs than legs, lungs, mechanicals, and crashes combined.
Absolutely. I would agree with that one. DNA came on board as a sponsor a little later in the run of our show, but every one of our collectible kits were designed, made, and distributed by DNA.
Yep, and I actually just put my money where our mouth has been, Hottie. You know how we've been telling people they can have custom kits made for this race? I actually just put in an order for a very personal kit for my friends and family celebrating the Hammers race this year, because it is going to be her 20th finish, and knock on wood. You and Mrs. Hottie are, of course, at the top of the list of recipients for that kit.
Looking forward to wearing some new bike clothing. Always nice to have something new to wear, so thank you for that. We'll wear them with pride as we crew for her this year. Let's also take a moment to thank our former sponsors, Floyd's of Leadville and Banjo Brothers.
Yep, I still use a Banjo Brothers bag on my fat bike every time I go riding, and I have a number of seat packs from them that I keep in frequent rotation. I'm still a fan of Floyd's protein mix, and the Hammer still uses their balms.
Very nice. In fact, I saw somebody on the participants page mention that they bought a number of things based on our recommendations, including a Banjo Brothers bag. So no question about it. We've been fortunate to have a great set of sponsors for this show.
Yeah. So now we're going to get a little self-referential, a little bit meta, Hottie. For this episode, let's talk about other episodes. Ones that you and I really like, the ones that we remember out of this 190 episodes. This isn't to say that anyone should listen only to the episodes we list. We love all 190 of our children equally. The fact is, this show is mostly evergreen. That said, I do want to talk about some of our favorites and why. If you're okay with it, I'll kick off, okay?
Go for it.
All right, so I'm going to start with the course. In season 1, you and I did a segment in each episode where we progressed through the whole race. And then toward the end of the season, we compiled that into one monster 3-hour plus episode. That mega episode is, in fact, the most listened to episode you and I have ever published. And it is followed closely by the course version 2, when we did the same thing in season 5, but with more precision and some course updates included. Honestly, I have been tempted to record a course version 2.1 where we add in the 2024 course changes. We'll see. Never say never.
Right. And if we were starting this podcast all over again and we could be in Leadville a lot, having visual on that course would have been kind of very cool. But we started this as an audio podcast, and we were always proud of how many people would just sit there and listen to our descriptions of the course and remark at what they got out of it. And they did get a lot of it, just listening to us talk mile by mile about this course. I'm going to start in more of a techie side of things. What a surprise. More of a data-driven side of things, and that's power meters. You know, the power meter, over the 7 seasons of the show, like the power meter really came to prominence as a tool people could not only train with, but race with at Leadville, which is why we had a couple of experts on the show talking about power meters and how to train and race with them. One of the best interviews we did was with Coach Hunter Allen. He literally wrote the book, Racing and Training with a Power Meter. He and Andy Coggan coined the phrase FTP. Like, they're the guys that kind of came up with this whole idea. So it was great to have Coach Hunter Allen on in season 7, episode 20, so not so long ago, talking about how to race and train with a power meter for Leadville. Additionally, Jonathan Lee has been a huge resource for this show. He's been in, I don't know how many episodes, probably more than
a dozen?
6, 7. Yeah, he's been on the show a lot. But one that I think folks are going back to a lot, and we would recommend you listen to, is season 6, episode 23. Jonathan walked us through how to use your power meter on race day to pace your Leadville Trail 100. It was a great piece of learning there, a real how to use watts to stay on time at Leadville.
Yeah, Trainer Road, Jonathan Lee in particular, has been a real friend to this show. And it is amazing how they've taken this race that had a lot of mysticism, a lot of mystery around it, and have turned it into something that you can really mathematically, almost quantifiably prepare for, so that, if you do the work and your numbers, you can do this race. And that is something that is going to give you a lot of confidence. And, there are some people who sort of miss the mystery. I am not one of them. I want anyone who spends the time, and there's a ton of time and money to get to that starting line, to have great confidence that they're going to get to the finish.
And one more data episode before you take your next one
sure.
there, Fatty, and that is season 7, episode 10, predicting your Leadville time with the best bike split ambassador, Dave Shell. That's a great way also to look at your power output and your watts per kilogram and your bike equipment and try and figure out like where you stand as far as time before you even get to Leadville. So that's another one.
Yeah. What's fun is you and I developed our favorite episode list separately, and we're just kind of ping-ponging them back and forth. What's fun is you and I picked more or less different episodes to talk about, just because we come at things from different perspectives, right? I came from a storytelling blog perspective. You came from hard journalism perspective. And I think that's what's made this show really good across the years. But there's going to be a little bit of overlap. Not this one, though. I love stories about how this race has affected people. I'm perfectly comfortable with being biased around highlighting my own family. So I'm going to recommend season 1, bonus episode 3, S1B3, the race. This race changed my life. This was my wife, the Hammer, reading the story of her first Leadville. Hadi, you might remember there was one year in Leadville in particular, I think it was year 2000, that the sky opened up. And for anyone who finished it 10 hours or later, they were drenched. And this is back before disc brakes were a thing. And so people were finishing coming down St. Kevin's without any brakes because they'd worn off their pads. Anyway, her telling the story, finishing her first Leadville hypothermic, is an inspiring story, and how it changed her and her whole life. I'm going to be honest, I still cry every time I listen to that thing. So give that one a listen. If you are doing the race for your first time, you'll be inspired by my wife. One of my very favorites of all time.
Right. I think in all of season 2, was it? I think we dedicated to storytelling, just people's stories.
I should remember which season we did what. We kind of picked themes, but there for sure were a lot of different ones. There was the COVID season where we just tried to keep going.
I know. Well, hey, I'll match you with personalities real quick.
All right.
Here's some of my kind of favorites from that genre of show that we did. First of all, we kicked off season 6 with 2 episodes from John Gaston. He's finished second, third, and second in the last 3 years at Leadville. He's not a mountain bike racer. Professionally, he's a skimo racer. So he had some great stories of hanging with Keegan, hanging with the front of the pack, even though he's kind of an outsider to those regular pro mountain bikers and gravel racers. Also love Jeff Leanhoutz. He was another great personality we mentioned often on this show. He's our Subway sandwich eating racer who likes to take a break at Twin Lakes, down a Subway sandwich. That conversation can be found season 4, episode 13. One of the greats all time in Leadville history is Todd Murray. He's one of 2 people to finish all Leadville Trail 100s. His story is worth a listen. In addition to his story, he's got great advice in there. We talked to him season 3, episode 22. And then a personal favorite of mine, somebody I pursued for a long time as an interview, was the creator of the Race Across the Sky movies. That's Frank Matson. And his story can be heard season 3, episode 15. Even though his story doesn't come from the bike racing the event, he has some great trials and tribulations and ups and downs on those 2 in the 2 years he made those movies about getting those Race Across the Sky movies done. Frank Matson, I think, is worth a listen to.
Yeah. Oh, well, you and I both love a good story. I mean, there's no question about that. I think it is worth mentioning Jeff Leanhoutz, who you just brought up. I think he is the next person who is up for a 30-year buckle. He is either 1 or 2 years away from that. So that's going to be super exciting to see as well. So I'm going to be continuing to cheer for Jeff Leanhoutz. But you're not the only one who likes a good science episode. If you remember back to just a couple episodes into this show, into this podcast, season 1, episode 4, we had an episode called The Lack of Air up there with Dr. Colin Grissom. This was just a couple episodes in. I am not a trained journalist, and so I was nervous to go into a hospital with my microphones and talk to a really well-known, very smart sports pulmonologist. I learned so much in that 1 hour. Honestly, it's influenced every race I've done since then.
That was I think the one show where you and I have some overlap. I noted that one too because it was so informative about what's going on with our bodies as we go higher and higher at the Leadville Trail 100. Really, really informative. Okay, altitude. Yeah, altitude is a major factor for the Leadville Trail 100. I think at times people overthink it, but we certainly addressed it a number of times on this show. I think that Dylan Johnson in season 6, episode 15 had some great insights about how to kind of time your arrival at Leadville, which a lot of people fret over. Dylan has a lot of time on he's a professional racer, so he can almost do what he wants regarding arrival, but he did have some great insights on, how to time your arrival to Leadville. We also did a show on acclimation with Chad Timmerman. He used to be with Trainer Road. That's season 5, episode 2. He talked about, how to get yourself ready for altitude and whether or not you can do that without going to altitude. The short answer is yes, you can. But if you want the complete explanation, the complete scientific reason why that is, check out season 5, episode 2 on acclimation.
Yeah, we have been so fortunate in how many really smart people have been generous with their time being on this show. I was just thinking, Dylan has been on this episode or on this show I don't know, a few times and learned tons from him. Love his YouTube channel. Definitely worth following that. And he does some coaching too. If you can afford him, you could do a lot worse than Dylan, right? The funnest episode, I think that at least for me, was when we did a Leadville Live episode and we had Floyd Landis, Jeremiah Bishop, and Dave Zabriskie sitting alongside us in the Leadville race retail shop. Mm-hmm. The five of us sitting there, we only had 4 mics, and so we were having to pass one of the mics back and forth between Floyd and Dave, and that was hilarious on its own. Dave Zabriskie's favorite or his takes on burning matches, I will never forget. He talked about it's something along the lines of, he said, well, when I was young, burning matches wasn't a big deal because I had an endless supply. And I was like, that is the difference between you and practically everyone else. But he also told a story about why you should not take a laxative suppository before the Leadville 100. Find that episode, season 2, episode 22. Great for some laughs and some good info in it too.
Yeah, I think Dave in that year was the fastest to the Twin Lakes Dam toilets. Fun episode. Wasn't fun to edit though. I remember that. There was a lot involved there. So yeah, great show though. It was the fun times. Let's see. I'm going to go to Dr. Justin Ross. Now, why would we have a licensed clinical psychologist on this show? Well, because, this race gets in your head. So twice we had on Dr. Justin Ross. He is a fan of the show. He's raced the race. In season 7, episode 8, we focused on all of Ken's sayings. You're better than you think you are, dig deep, and really dug into what those phrases mean and how we can internalize them and apply them as we race the Leadville Trail 100. Love that one. And then Dr. Ross was also on season 5, episode 8 to really discuss kind of the mental mechanics of racing hard events like the Leadville Trail 100. So thanks to Dr. Justin Ross for coming on those 2 times.
I'm going to be honest, Toddy. When you pitched doing those episodes, I thought they were going to be so dumb. And I love those episodes. Dr. Ross is incredible. When he essentially broke down the how to approach doing a hard race, that was so inspiring. We heard from so many listeners talking about how much that helped. So kudos to you. And I am glad that you and I come from different mental perspectives. We're different personalities. I think that's made a big difference in making this show what it has been. Something that I pitched that I don't know how you felt about it when we originally did it. We did a few episodes on owning your dumb mistakes. We got Dave Weens, Rebecca Rush, Jeremiah Bishop, Yuri Hauswald, and Allison Tetrick to each tell the stories of the dumbest things they have ever done on a bike. I learned a ton and I laughed a lot. And I really love those 3 episodes. Season 3, episode 12, 14, and 16.
Oh, I remember exactly how I felt. I thought that they would tell you, no, I don't want to talk about my failures. I'd like to talk about my successes, not my failures. But they did, and they were quite open about them. And I loved editing and listening back to those in the edit room. So those were great. Yeah, and I think Allie's was. Yeah, Allie's she's got all kinds of wild stories, especially at Leadville, about trying to make it through the day of nutrition and hydration, and a lot of crazy things happen to her. And she's great about talking about them.
I love what an open book she is.
Yeah, it's pretty. Well, let's talk about food and hydration then while we're on that subject. Dr. Alan Lim, founder of Scratch. I think enough said there, right? All you got to do is listen to that guy. He's got the goods. He was on 2 episodes in season 6. They were episode 13 and 18. Dr. Alan Lim has studied deep on how to hydrate and fuel for big events. He's worked with pro teams. He's worked with amateurs. He has Scratch Labs. He has a great nutrition company. So he is worth a listen. Also, Denis Fay, who's comes at it more from a life nutrition standpoint, he helped us understand how we can expand the number of calories we take in. This has become really a running theme in the fueling and hydration world. We're seeing a lot of athletes taking a high number of grams of carbohydrates. Well, we focused on that topic a couple seasons ago, season 5, episode 15, and Denis kind of walked us through the idea of helping our guts training our guts, right? Just like we train our legs and lungs and minds, train your gut to really take in a lot of carbohydrates. On the hydration side, hey, hydration is key to this race too. Dr. Kevin Sprouse, he works with Team EF, season 5, episode 9. Dr. Sprouse led us He led us down the road of what can go right and what can go wrong with hydration, how to correct it, and how to get it right. He's worked at the highest level of the sport and really has an understanding about how hydration works in our bodies, how we need to balance everything to make sure we get it right. Because as Fatty has said, this is an eating and drinking contest disguised as a race. You got to get those two things right, or you're going to be pulled over, getting your wristband cut off, and day done.
Yeah, yeah. I loved every time we had Dr. Sprouse on the show because that man knows so much and is so good at distilling it into something that you can use. That was fantastic. Another story episode that I really loved, and this one was so different than most of what we did. This was The Scariest Half Hour featuring Earl Walker. Great storytelling from the moto. The guy who rides the moto in front of the lead racers, telling the story of how he, what it is like to be on that motorcycle, in front of the guys as they come down Powerline or come down Columbine. Just great storytelling there.
Yeah, that was a good one too. Let's see. We got a lot of great feedback on an interview we did with mountain bike skills coach Lee McCormick. That interview was done at Sea Otter kind of on the fly, but it came out great. Leadville may not look like a technical mountain bike race on paper, but it will sneak up and grab your front wheel if you go in with weak bike handling skills. Lee is a great talker and a great teacher, and you can hear his tips in season 2, episode 17.
Yeah, you cannot treat this like it is a gravel race. I see people who have had serious crashes every single year. It is a mountain bike race. Last one on my list, Toddy, and I am just going to say I loved every time we did a show where we had essentially a crew meeting and planned out the race. They were a fun peek into essentially my anxiety and the amazing minds for planning both you and Mrs. Hottie have. I will always remember season 5, episode 23, because I was recording that inside of a dark walk-in closet in a Leadville Airbnb that I was staying at, talking into a stack of pillows that I had arranged, to get rid of some of the reverb in that room, while you and Mrs. Hottie detailed your plans for crewing for us just a couple weeks down the road. You two really do a fantastic job of crewing for a big crew of racers, and the way that you work through the process, people can just learn from your strategies. You've done it a lot. You do it great. You take care of a lot of people who are doing this race. That matters. Yeah,
and it's equally almost as exciting as racing the race, if not more so. Like the comings and goings of the riders you're looking for and anticipating them, and the unknown that they present as they pull into the pit. And you're not only feeding their guts, but you're kind of feeding their minds too. You, for instance, have a lot more needs than just getting fresh gels in your pockets. You're concerned about Melissa. You're concerned about Lisa. You want to know, what the weather looks like. I mean, there's a lot going on there, and so making sure you're pushed away from the pit with not only fresh bottles, but a fresh mind is important as well. Lisa's a great person to feed, by the way. She comes in. I think I've always seen her with a smile on her face coming in.
Mm-hmm.
We even missed her hydration pack one year. We screwed that up. And she, unfazed. It was her lead challenge year, in fact. Unfazed, turned around, came back. Hey, you forgot my hydration pack. We got it on her. got her going again. So, and then handing bottles up to Melissa. I don't know if I've ever had a prouder moment when she won.
Oh yeah.
When she won the Leadville Trail 100, I thought, well, I got to hand the champion a bottle. That was one of the coolest things. One of the coolest things to do. So.
For sure, all of us who got to be a part of that day last year. Oh yeah, that's going to be one of those bright spots that I remember absolutely forever. Let's make sure we talk about Nate Whitman.
Yeah, another person I've been proud to be involved with. I've helped feed him, and he's helped the show a number of times. He thinks about the Leadville Trail 100 a lot. It's one of the few races he does all year, but it's one he's quite successful at. We have had him on the show like 4 or 5 times, maybe more. I can't even remember. So. Just go into our feed and search for his name, Nate Whitman, and then listen to whatever comes up, because there's going to be information. Nate's a fast guy. Look, he's a guy that's done low 7 hours at Leadville. But he started out like the rest of us. He started out doing 10 plus hours, I think, out there, maybe longer than that.
Yeah, he used to ride with me. Yeah. I mean, literally, he and I did our first couple of Leadville 100s riding alongside each other, talking about dreaming about someday finishing sub 9. Mm-hmm. He's finished well below 9 hours now. He calls himself the fastest guy you'd never heard of.
Right.
And, everyone's heard of him now. Humble guy, fast guy, smart guy, nice guy.
Yeah. So thank you, Nate Whitman, for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom. And we'll see you in Leadville, Nate.
Yeah, looking forward to it. All right, Hadi. Oh man, you know what I want to do now? I want to go back and listen to our show. It's like we're going to have to go back and listen to it as a listener at some point.
Right. Well, let's talk about a few other sources listeners can go to for a successful Leadville.
Let's do. I want to start with Cody Waite. We probably should have put him in our list of favorite episodes. I forget exactly. Was it season 6? Yeah, I think it was season 6 where we had him on, or his wife on, practically every episode. Waite Endurance. Man, we got a lot of good information from him. Great coach if you were looking for a coach who races at an extremely elite level and coaches a lot of kids to some incredibly fast times. He is someone who knows what he's talking about.
If you're looking for more online resources and somebody who has Leadville experience, we've already mentioned his name once here in this show, Dylan Johnson. We love Dylan. Dylan comes from a more technical, analytical side of things. If that's you, you should really get into a lot of the stuff he has there. Some of it's completely Leadville focused. Some of it's more gravel, fitness, endurance, racing focused. He's just got a wealth of knowledge there on his YouTube channel. So check out Dylan.
Yep. And check out Backwards Hat Dylan as well. and our friend Michael Iddings, who has been on this show talking about the heart issues he had before coming back and successfully doing the race numerous times. He has a YouTube channel as well. Jeff Diefenbach. I want to talk, who manages our Slack channel and has been on this show and is the guy you and I go to when we have any math or data related problems. By the way, the Leadville Slack will continue to live. Leadville.fm/Slack to get signed up on that. We're going to continue having conversations there.
Cool. Yeah. Jeff's been a big help to the show. We've had him on a couple times to do any type of data analysis on, for instance, we did one show with him trying to figure out what's the success rate of buckling from the White Corral. And we did our best with the data that was available to kind of crunch the numbers on that. And he took the lead on all of that. So Jeff, thank you very much for all your help over the years. Not to mention the numerous times I've just sent him questions on things like, can this be figured out? And he's always right there with some type of answer.
Also worth noting, Jeff did a fantastic job of helping our friend Chris, calls himself Blind Chris, as he raced the Tour Divide. Oh, I hope that Chris comes back for Leadville 100 this year.
Okay, Fatty and I aren't exactly going away. I mean, you can still hear our voices.
No.
Some of you know this. We're on the Marginal Gains podcast. It's a Silka production. Silka, the bike pump company. We do shows over there. Some of them are applicable to Leadville. Well, in fact, a lot of them. I mean, if you're into the technical side of things and you want to get a better understanding of drivetrain efficiency, which I highly recommend you do if you're planning to do the Leadville Trail 100, like you should want a good operating drivetrain. And one way to do that is go over to our Marginal Gains podcast and get an understanding about how you can better prepare your chain and your gearing to get ready for the Leadville Trail 100. Yes, am I a hot wax evangelist? You're damn right I am. I'm going to push that down your throat and suggest you do that for the Leadville 100. That's what Fatty does now. There's also a lot of stuff about aerodynamics, rolling resistance. So
tire pressure.
I mean, all applicable to Leadville, but you get ready because it's Josh. It's Josh Portner from Silka, and he's quite technically minded. So good stuff over there, though.
Deep stuff, definitely worth listening to. And, if you've come to appreciate Hottie and me and our particular brand of nerdiness, that is a place where you will still be able to find us. We have to mention the Leadville Facebook page. I am there more or less every day, just checking to see what is there. I am more than happy to answer questions whenever I see them. I see Hottie posting there on a very frequent basis, so you can find us there sometimes.
Yep, it's been a great resource and a great way to talk about this show and get participation too on the show. And we've run polls there that have helped turn into content on the show. So the participants page is almost a must now if you plan on doing the Leadville Trail 100. Payson McKelvin, he has a great podcast, the Adventure Stash podcast, the podcast that ensures he'll never shave his face ever. He's just stuck now. He's going to have a mustache his whole life. But it's a great show, especially if you want to hear from other Leadville athletes. Most of them are fast people, but he does have a lot of Leadville athletes and a lot of endurance athletes on the show. So it's a great place to stop in. And Payson's been on this show too, helping us answer questions about racing the Leadville Trail 100. So want to show him some love too.
Yeah, Payson did a couple of Q&A episodes with us. And I got to say, I have loved the evolution of Payson McKelvin on his podcast. And over the years, he has become a brilliant interviewer.
Yes.
He's always been a good conversationalist. No shade on his earlier shows, but now I listen to his show and I am like, wow, that guy is insightful, and wow, he is good at getting people to open up. So Payson doing fantastic job. I love his show. Another show I love, Trainer Road, Ask a Cycling Coach podcast. I, of course, subscribe to Trainer Road. I have I think practically since it exists. Jonathan Lee's been on it forever, been on our show many times. Another extremely smart person who is also very interested in helping anyone he meets or has virtually met become a faster cyclist.
Right. And they have a forum too,
Yeah.
Over at Trainer Road, and you'll see a lot of Leadville discussion there. I understand Trainer Road, I think, finds that of all the races that people come to Trainer Road for advice and training, Leadville is a leading race for them. So they are attuned. They know who's subscribing to their product, and largely it is folks that listen to the show and race the Leadville Trail 100. We've mentioned already before the man who made the Two Race Across the Sky movies. Folks, use those movies as a resource. A lot of the visuals in there, a lot of the corks is still relevant information. If you can't make it to Leadville, if you've never been to Leadville, and you want to get a primer on how things kind of flow for that race, the movies were made in 2009, 2010. They're still relevant. I still watch them. They're if not for exactly how the race plays out or where it goes, just for the pure inspiration. I mean, you really will get a nice lift. If you're kind of down in the dumps, if your training's not going well, you pop in that CD or rather that DVD, and boom, it'll really lift your spirits and get you motivated about where you. Plus, you get to see Fatty. He's in the movie, so that's great.
I briefly am in there talking about single speeding a little bit. Much more importantly, you don't see Ken Klober as much anymore. He is getting on in years. Go back to those movies and you hear him get racers pumped up in the way that only Ken Klober can. He continues and always will be the heart of this race. And so it is really nice to see him when he was in his speaking prime, kind of get into it and really rev up the racers the way that we love. The From the Ground Up series, that's another show that I think is worth taking a look at. You can find it on YouTube, watching folks who are basically off the couch, off the bench, try to get ready to do the Leadville 100. to varying degrees of success. We won't do a ton of spoiler alerts on this one, but it is definitely worth watching just to kind of, again, see the course and see how difficult it is. That there are so many people who, without knowing what they're talking about, will go and say, it's another gravel race. And you see people who try to do this race who don't have the experience or preparation, and you get a sense it's like, oh, that's what happened when someone who's not ready goes and tries to do this thing.
Yeah. Not just first timers, but people who are very new to cycling. So that's why it can give you some insight about how, not what you're up against, but who might be able to try and take on this event and the leaps that need to be made to get you to Sixth and Harrison. So yeah, we love the guys too. They're great.
Yeah,
they were helpful to us. They've come on and just shared knowledge too, which is cool. So
it has been great, and they learned a lot between the first and I think the third, fourth season, and shared a lot of what they wish they would have done or what they would tell new racers. Now, actually, their most recent appearance on this show was extremely informative.
Yeah, it was
very informative.
Some new areas that I only recently thought, oh, maybe this would be a spot that we should have been looking at all along for this show, and we really didn't too much, and that's Reddit and the Slow Twitch forum. Now, Reddit, a lot of you folks have heard of Reddit. I just this morning, or just last night, checked Reddit for kind of Leadville conversations, and I couldn't find, I may be wrong on this, an actual Leadville Trail 100 mountain bike race subreddit, but I did see a lot of Leadville discussions, including some people recommending this show. So Reddit is a great place to stop off and just bounce ideas off of people. If you're finding the Facebook participants page is a bit too much, and it has. I mean, it's become a lot there. And also the Slow Twitch forum, a good spot that's mostly triathlete based, but the forums go quite deep there. And, triathletes know a lot of what we should know to do this race. I mean, they are the kings of preparation. So there's nothing wrong with kind of cross-referencing with other types of athletes. I like the Slow Twitch forum too, and you're likely to find a Leadville conversation going in as well. So two kind of new spots there, Fatty.
Good advice. I actually have never looked at either of those. So places for me to learn as well. That's fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, let's keep this thing moving, right? With this, Fatty, you've been at this for a long time. And I know Mrs. High and I always kind of wonder, like, Fatty, when will his last Leadville be anyhow? I mean, this is a lot of buckles. You got a lot of hardware going, a lot of finishes. So what will your objectives be between now and your last Leadville?
And forever. Who knows? It's a question I've asked myself a few times. So I am going to be doing what I hope will be my 27th Leadville this year. I think that 30 is a good objective for me. So I will be racing this year, supporting Lisa as she does her 20th. I will be 59 years old. Next year, I'll be 60 years old, and I kind of have this vision of being a 60-year-old sub-9 finisher on a single speed, perhaps. So there's that. At that point, I'm going to be close to retirement age and also getting close to my 30th Leadville. So I'm for sure at least going to go that far.
Okay.
After that, as a retiree, maybe I'll have enough time that I'll be like, yeah, I'm going to keep doing it until I can't do it. Or maybe I'll be like, that was enough. At some point you do have a finish line. That's what we're doing today. And I'd rather be like, going out like Seinfeld than like MASH, is my classic comparison, right? So yeah, we will see, but I think 30. That's a number that I'm using as my horizon right now. Okay, Hadi, I got a question for you. You've seen the race from more perspectives than I have. You've seen it as a pacer, as a racer, and as a crew. What's the most useful, valuable advice you would give racers?
Okay, let's see. Well, don't let the altitude consume you as you're preparing, at least, right? I mean, it's going to affect you. It affects everyone when they get there. Better to let your training be your focus than just, this altitude thing, right? Get in the best shape you can is probably better than scheduling special trips to Leadville. Let's do that. If you focus on that, and it's not just Hottie saying that. Like, we've had experts on the show say that, yeah, it just costs a lot of money to go to altitude and a lot of stress, and it may not go right for you. Get in the best shape you can.
Yeah.
And the altitude's going to do what it does. It's just largely something that going there is not going to fix, okay? The feed zones. These should be well-planned pit stops, Jeff Leanhouse notwithstanding. The idea is to keep moving. This is Rebecca Rush advice, by the way. I'm echoing here. This is what she told me after my first Leadville. I told her what my time was. I said, what was my problem? She said, you spent too much time in the feed zones. Keep moving.
Yep.
So plan them out. Know exactly what you're going in for and what you should be pulling away with. And have your crew kind of on that same page as well. And if it's scripted as close as possible, yeah, things can change. Then you should be able to pull off timely, well-run feed zones with as few mistakes as possible. Okay? So that would be my feed zone advice. Tires. Oh my God, tires. Everyone wants to know what to run. Everyone else thinks they have the right answer. No and no.
Yeah.
Just get a good XC tire. You're probably going to need a little extra sidewall protection if you're like most folks that you're comfortable on. And if you want to obsess about anything with tires, obsess on your pressure.
Yeah.
Like really dial your pressure. What Josh Portner of Silka has taught us is that getting your tire pressure right can have big effects on how well you roll down the trail or road. So really work on pressure, obsess less on what brand you're running and who's running what and asking people. Really work on tire pressure. Okay? So that's kind of my 3 spots. How about you, Fatty? What's your advice for this thing?
I like your advice on tire pressure. That is so true. Oh, the number of discussions that we have seen on the Facebook page. And honestly, if you are not working on a podium spot, it just doesn't matter very much. Having sealant matters. That's good. That's important. Here's my advice. Train it the way you're going to race it. Know your food, your clothing, your tire pressure, your riding volume, your intensity. Spend some time at altitude if you can so that you have a sense of like, oh, at 11,500 feet, I start getting tunnel vision or I have to get off my bike. Knowing about that ahead of time is really nice. This race is going to surprise everyone their first time and maybe their second time and third time. There's not a way to get around that, but you can reduce the number of surprises in a lot of ways. So train it the way you're going to race it. Get used to the food you're going to eat. And no, not just like for 2 hours. You got to go out there and do some 6-hour rides because how a gel tastes during hour 1 is very, very different from how it tastes at hour 7.
Yes, get to know that food. Man, that has been a recurring theme here, hasn't it?
It is what changed me from being a 10-hour racer to being an 8:30 racer. It really is. It was that and that more than anything else.
Yeah. Okay, are we done here?
Well, I wouldn't say we're done forever necessarily. I don't know. It costs about $100 a year for me to keep this podcast hosted. So I'm going to let it be live as long as I see that people are still downloading episodes. And I mean, there's no law that prevents us from coming back if we feel like it. I know you have the mind of a journalist and you've got the password to our podcast hosting account. So if you feel like it, you can post interviews anytime you want to. And maybe next year, I'll feel like telling the story of training to race on a single speed, targeting a sub-9 finish as a 60-year-old. Or maybe I will feel like taking more naps. Hard to say.
Yeah, I think all we're saying here is looks like we don't have many shows this year, if at all. So,
right.
But it doesn't mean that the show is dissipating into the ether, right? It's still alive. It's still a resource. It's still something you should continue to lean into. I mean, I think what this show said is go back and listen to the catalog, and you listen again. Like as is good reason to go back and like listen to a Hunter Allen or listen to a Jonathan Lee or listen to Rebecca Rush. Like, oh yeah, and pick up right. I do. I listen to our own show again. In fact, Hunter Allen is on my list to listen to because I want to recall what he said about FTP and about getting ready for events. It's all really good stuff. So, we will both be at the Leadville 100 this year. So there's that. Please, when you see us on the course or the bike shop, coffee shop, wherever, the expo, introduce yourself, say thanks if you want, ask questions if you want. We can still help, and we will, if at all possible.
Oh yeah, love talking with people. Lisa doesn't love it so much, but she does put up with it. She knows that I live for it. So good luck in your Leadville training. Thanks for listening to our independent podcast for 190 episodes. We're going to talk with you later in person on the bike in Leadville and, of course, at the starting line.